started. What do you need to get started? Before you publish, you're going to need a few things in place. So right now, today, if you are considering publishing, self-publishing 6 months from now or even a year from now, these are things you need to start looking at. A cover. I'm going to go into a bit more depth on covers in a moment, but you may need to book a cover artist. If you're going to get a custom cover designed, you may need to book this months in advance, because covers are, a lot of the good cover designers are booked long in advance. So think about what you're going to do for a cover, how much money you're prepared to pay. Are you going to pre-book a cover artist or slot with a cover artist? The same thing goes with an editor. These two items are non-negotiable. Now, there are ways around it, and I will discuss how you can save some money and do this cost effectively. But these two elements are absolutely non-negotiable. You need a professional looking cover that can compete with all the other books that are out there on Amazon or on the other retailers. As I said, there is a lot of competition out there. If your cover looks amateurish, if it looks handmade, you are not going to sell books. People really do judge books by their covers. And an editor, having your friend who's a high school English teacher proofread your book is not sufficient. You need an editor who specializes in your genre. And I would recommend that you have a developmental edit first, where somebody looks at the big picture. And we have covered this in previous webinars, what the different types of editors are and do and how to do this. But you do need a developmental editor who looks at things like story structure, character arcs, etc. Then you need a copy editor or a proofreader, or preferably both. And this person who proofreads your book for, by copy editor, we mean somebody who checks the grammar, the spelling, who finds the punctuation errors, the formatting inconsistencies, inconsistencies in the character and names, etc. Ideally, they should be different people, because sometimes if an editor has already done one pass of a novel and they've already gone through developmental edits, they might not see the smaller fine-tuned stuff. So you want a fresh set of eyes to proofread your book before it gets published. And I can promise you, if you skimp on your editor, if you decide that this is a step you're going to skip because it costs too much money, then there is a large chance that your book will not sell. It might flop. It might get bad reviews. And I've actually known people who had to stop writing under a name and change to a whole new name to avoid the stigma that attached to their old name, because they skipped this very crucial stage. So covers, I'm going to go into more. An editor is going to cost you, I would say, anywhere between $500 and $1,000. How do you save money on an editor? Well, firstly, do not write an epic 100,000 word book. Most editors charge by the word or by the page. So obviously, the more words you have in your novel, the more it's going to cost you. You could have beta readers if you find readers, preferably experienced readers in your genre, and your editor should always be experienced in your genre as well. You don't just want some random nonfiction author editing your thriller novel, because they're not going to know what the genre conventions are for thrillers. So you could find a group of beta readers, for example, and get them to read and evaluate your work. That's one option. You can obviously look at, you get what you pay for. You can find cheaper editors. You can find more expensive editors. I happen to think that our novel editing rates are very competitive and quite cost effective. Another thing you could do is look for an editor in a country where the cost of living is cheaper. So, for example, a country like Australia or New Zealand or India or South Africa, you're more likely to find an editor who's willing to work for less than you would in a country where they've obviously got a higher cost of living. That said, and I'm particularly saying this just in case there are any fellow South Africans listening to this webinar, if you are writing a book that is set in a different culture, I know a lot of South African authors who set their books, for example, in the UK or the US, you should get yourself an editor who is in the US if you are aiming for the US market, because they will catch things that maybe you are not aware, no matter how you think you've done your research. I really, really recommend you need to get an editor who lives and breathes in the market that you are aiming your book at. The next step is a proofreader. As I said, this is usually something I would separate out from an editor. Again, if you're going to get at least pay for one round or get at least one round of professional editing. A beginner, a fairly new editor is going to charge less money. A friend could proofread for you. You could have a group of beta readers who are your final. For example, if you pay an editor to do a professional edit on your book, then instead of paying a proofreader, you could potentially have a group of 3, 4, 5 beta readers who do the proofing for you. But I really do recommend you don't skip one of these steps, because the final proofreader is going to catch all those final little typos that slip through on the main edit. And I promise you, my books often go through 6, 7 rounds of edits with different editors at my publishing house, a different proofreader, and there are still mistakes that slide through. Those mistakes are pernicious. Formatting. Now, this is something you can do yourself, and I will talk more about formatting later, but you absolutely do need to format your book properly. And you can, again, this is where you get what you pay for. You can hire a professional formatter to give you a beautiful glossy book. You could buy your own software to do your own formatting, or you could even just format your own book in Word or Scrivener. But there are certain conventions that you do need to pay attention to. Then, before you publish, you are going to need a product description, also known as a blurb, which I'm going to talk about more. You're going to need an author bio, so think about how you want to put yourself out there, what your brand is, and you're going to need a nice, smart-looking profile picture. You don't want one of those pictures where you've cut off the arm of the person who's hugging you at some party. You want a good head and shoulders picture that you can use. ARCs, author review copies, also known, or you could just call them review copies. You want to, once you have completed your manuscript and you've gone through all of these stages before you publish, you want to have review copies ready that you can distribute to reviewers. And I'm going to talk more about reviews. And then you need to think about a basic marketing strategy. Now, these are things that are going to cost you money. The cover, an editor, possibly a proofreader, possibly a formatter, possibly marketing. There are ways and means that you can absolutely launch your book without any marketing budget. But again, you're going to need to decide and tailor this plan for yourself. But I really do suggest you think about how you're going to market your book, even if it's in the most basic ways, because without a plan, your book will fail. As I said, there is a lot of competition. You cannot assume that readers will just find you.